I tell parents this all the time. The kids are never going to do what we tell them to do. They're only going to do what they see us do.
Welcome to Talking About Kids. I am your host, R. Bradley Snyder, researcher, activist, and co-author of the What Every Child Needs to Know series of board books for pre-readers. In honor of Mother's Day, I wanted to examine the evolving demands of motherhood. And I could think of no better person to help me do that than my dear friend, Nicole Feliciano. For nearly 2 decades, Nicole has convened and supported mothers, initially through her wildly successful blog, Mom Trends, then with her book, Mom Boss Balancing Entrepreneurship, Kids, and Success, and most recently with Ski Moms Fun, which is a podcast and social media focusing on winter sports and motherhood. She and I discussed the changes she has seen and her advice for staying balanced. This podcast was sponsored in part by the Arizona Department of Health Services Must Stop Bullying campaign through its Title V Maternal and Child Health Program. For more information, go to muststopbullying.org. And now, the interview.
I came to motherhood later, I think as many Gen X people did. We definitely brought the birth age way up societally.
Right.
And I was used to having strong women around me through work and through friendship and through school. So I thought that the great motherhood experiment should be absolutely the same. So I was looking for a sense of community within my experience, and looking for women who had careers beforehand, looking for women who were looking at parenthood through maybe a different lens, that it was just a part of who they were,
Hmm.
not all of who they were. So that led me to building a community, building what I wanted to have reflected back at me. And fortunately, I was coming to it right as blogs were happening, and there was very, very low barrier to entry, both with experience and with
Hmm.
technology. And it was a good place to be at the right time.
And we're talking, specifically about your blog, Mom Trends, which is,
Yes.
as blogs have grown, it's grown too. It's now kind of a hub, I guess is a better way to say it. It's not just posts, it's video, it's community, it's all of that. And that was 17 years ago when you started that, wasn't it?
It was. Again, I was coming back from a little bit of time off, recovering from a career in fashion and trying to figure out my next move. I'd spent almost 10 years at Ralph Lauren, and blogs were coming to the forefront. I was doing some freelance writing, and it was a great place to be. And funny story, I didn't have a dog, but I was writing for a dog website at the time for affluent New Yorkers with their dogs. And I was reviewing products for the dog website. And she had a little subsite called Puppy Trends on the dog website. And at that time, I thought, oh, Mom Trends would be a great place for mom gear.
Right, right.
And I spent looked to buy the URL. It was purchased, so I had to spend $25 to buy it from the person who owned it beforehand. So that worked out well for me.
Yeah, I
$25
think that was
investment.
a good investment, and I do think, for people who haven't spent a lot of time in New York City, that the differences between the child carriers and the pet carriers is almost non-existent, right? They're very similar.
It's not differentiated by price, that's for sure.
That's true. And some of the designs, I think you can coordinate your pet carrier and your child carrier.
Yes, and there's definitely been times I've peeked around the carrier to see, expecting a baby and seeing a puppy in there for sure.
I have learned how not to react when that happens because for a long time it startled me, and I've definitely like tried to train myself when that
But
happens.
yeah, just react with delight, and you can't
Yeah,
go wrong.
absolutely, absolutely. But in those 17 years, like, what sort of changes in mothering have you seen? What sort of questions or what sort of concerns are these mothers having?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of navel gazing in my Gen X experience.
Mm,
We were coming to motherhood with sort of we were raised a little feral, the kids of the 70s,
yeah,
where we were raised with after school soap operas and drinking from hoses, and all the Sunday or Saturday morning TV we wanted with Captain Crunch.
right.
And that was a little different than the experience that people who waited to have kids in their late 30s, and they were looking at this as an investment like they had with their careers, and they wanted to do it very intentionally. And I think maybe scientifically in some ways, they were definitely looking at it as a part of their personality, and a part, as if you will, of their brand or their career path, that
Mm,
these children were going to need to fit in around that. And there was a lot of angst, I think, at that time, that we've worked so hard to get this far, for our moms, who raised us as feminists, and that we could do anything, and we could, for the most part, could do anything, and then we wanted to have children in addition to that.
right.
So we were the first generation trying to do both of those things simultaneously, and many of us were failing miserably at that. So blogs were a great opportunity to write about those failures and the disappointments.
Interesting. And how did it affect, because you're also a mother. So how did that process, both, that the process of creating Mom Trends, the blog, and watching all of these other mothers interact, but also the process of writing your book, which I should also mention, which is Mom Boss: Balancing Entrepreneurship, Kids, and Success. How did the process of managing that blog and then writing that book affect your own parenting?
Well, I think the good news is I wrote that book almost 10 years into parenting. It
Right.
was a little over 10 years. I'm very glad that I didn't feel emboldened in the first 2 years to write that book, because that would have been kind of silly, thinking that I had had some major headway and something new to share to parents after only a couple years of parenting. There were definitely ups and downs along the way of parenting. And there are also sort of two steps forward career wise and with building the brand of Trends, and then often three steps back. At one point we grew to $1 million in revenue. I had 15 employees. We had office space, and I was doing a pretty poor job managing everything at home.
Mm,
And I had to take a step back at that point. And that was interesting at the height, at just at the point where the book had come out and was selling, and I was marketing it. And I had learned a lot along the way about taking on more projects than I had time for. So interesting. The book was sort of a tipping point of one more project that did force me to let
right.
go of some things when I added that on. But I tried to be, when I was writing the book, and I look at back on it now, and I wish I had done more. And if I do write a second book, wish I had done more to address, single moms,
Mm,
because there wasn't that much of it in the book, and it also had a lens of affluence to it. And I was pretty honest about, I was writing this book for women who had college
mhm,
careers, and had been working in corporate sector before they had kids. But I do wish I had taken more time to honor the single moms that were in that same boat. So had I had it to all do over again, but I do think there was a lot of honesty in there of the things I had to give up,
mm,
um, and to let go, and to embrace, and also to really say, certain careers are a little bit easier to match with motherhood than other careers are, and certain types of marriages are
mhm.
also easier to match with that soup of motherhood, parenting, and having a relationship with your spouse and a career that's fulfilling. Um, I think it was a really good self exploration for
Mhm.
me. So it was intensely personal writing that book from my lens. But as I'm now, coming up on almost 10 years from writing the book, I do see like some of the things I left out that I would add in if I had it to do over again.
I've known you for a long time. I've followed your career, but we're friends independent of that. And I have to say, I think that you've gotten really much better at following your own advice. I hope I have too. It was hard. There are times in being a parent myself where what I was doing wasn't what I would recommend. And it was hard to do that. But I know that you've gotten a lot better in, doing those things, having that practice that you prescribe. Do you know how that transformation occurred?
At the time, getting older,
Mm,
and wiser, certainly. And I will say in the past 3 years, having a daughter with epilepsy is also, do not recommend, do not give it all the stars in the review, but it is when you're given a healthcare challenge like epilepsy to manage, you really are, you, as a parent, you have no choice but to focus on the things that are right in front of you and spend your time wisely, and also to reflect that back in what you want your child to do, that we're going to be, all of us are going to be given challenges and things that we don't want, and we've just got to move forward. So I would say in the past 3+ years of helping my daughter navigate her diagnosis, has also given me the gift of crystallizing, what I do want to spend my time
mm,
on that's not spent with family. And it's been a gift in its own way. And I tell parents this all the time: the kids are never going to do what we tell them to
right.
do. They're only going to do what they see us do. So I think, by living very intentionally and focusing my energies on the things that I really believe in, it's the same thing for her, because with epilepsy, she's learned that she only has so much to expend in a day. One of the things
Right.
that are really important for her is recharging, and picking the things that she does very intentionally. And I think I'm doing the same thing for her. And then having an older daughter who's about to launch into college, I'm so, one of the things I'm really proud of is how I prioritized my friendships over the years and really made time for that, because they give me so much.
Right.
They help refuel me on those very tough days. And seeing the way she does prioritize her friends, and not just um, hanging out, which is, of course, is super important when you're a teenager, but showing up for her friends, picking her friends wisely, supporting her friends when they go through tough times. I'm really proud that she's
Mm.
taken a good lead in that.
So, you've already given out some advice here, some specifics. You've talked about that children are going to do what you do, not necessarily what you say. You've already talked about the important the importance of fostering those friendships and how they can be a source of resilience. Something else that I know that you are good at, that you have especially recently been promoting with mothers, and that you are good at doing yourself, is spending time outdoors. Why is that so important to mothering, do you think?
It makes us reawaken our physical selves,
Mm,
spending time outdoors. And it takes us outside of our heads a lot of times, where we can be overwhelmed with the to-do list, the tasks, and on the downside, the comparisons of, so and so is getting more done or has more parenting success than I do. But there's something about the physical nature, and specifically the things that I choose to do, skiing and time spent on winter sports, where you quite literally have to watch your footing with what you do
mm,
to make sure that you stay upright,
right.
whether you're hiking on icy slopes or skiing or Nordic skiing. You cannot multitask. You cannot be thinking about what's happening in the next hour, week, month, year. You've got to focus on, one foot in front of the other. And it's been a very good meditative practice of being in the moment, because that's the only choice you have, is to be in, I mean, you
Right.
can choose to fall or hurt yourself, but nature has a great way of reminding you when you're doing these winter sports or active outdoor sports that you need to be where you are right in the moment. And I did come to, winter sports later in life. I learned to ski in my 30s. I learned to Nordic ski in my 40s. And it's very humbling to come to these
Mm.
things later, but it's also great to show your kids that you can pick up new tricks along the way.
No, I think that's it's well, obviously it's supported by the neuroscience as well. This idea of taking on these new challenges, these new experiences, and how they use different parts of the brain, right? And that can really kind of awaken and grow new areas and new structures within the brain, which is really exciting. Um, that recharging too. I mean, that seems to be a theme. You talk about its importance in the life of your daughter, but you talk about its importance. As a mother, something that we both hear a lot. And I don't know how else to convince people of it. So maybe you have ideas. We hear people that say they don't have time to do things for themselves, that even if they do, they feel guilty because it might be time that they could be spending on their child, or they could be spending on their job, and so the last thing that they do is take that time for a walk, take that time to exercise, take that time to focus on themselves. Like, how do we convince them that they need to take that time?
Well, you and I know that they're going to be better parents,
Right.
partners, and people if they take that time. And I think the reminder of the joy in the moment, that it's not just a physical task to be done, but that it's really fun, a lot
Mm,
of it. And I try through social media, without being Pollyanna-ish, to really show the joy of the outdoors, and that the silly, fun, messy parts. I often feel the most like a child and the
mm.
youngest when I am playing outside. And I do think this is one of the best uses of social media, is to share the joy in that. And you can curate a feed that will make you feel really good about spending time outside. I mean, my girls often grab my phone and they'll say, how did you trick Instagram into giving you this? And I said, this is what I look at. I mean, you'll see so many videos of people spending time outdoors with their dogs in my video feed, or 50 plus women skiing. And you can fool the algorithm to giving you more of what you want by really tapping into the joy there. And so I do try to use my experiences to lead, and I've also tried to use my experiences to gather, and
Mm.
to gather women either in small groups locally, where I have a number of women who I hike with, or I ski with, or I do things with. And they're when women want to meet up with me instead of a coffee or a shopping date, I quite regularly do hiking dates or skiing dates. That's how we connect, is when we're on a trail, we're
Yeah.
on a lift. And it is so fantastic to, meet and spend time with a friend doing something active. So I not only can you do something great for your body, but you're doing something great for your relationships by spending time together. And my husband and I do dates like this where we're hiking or skiing all the time, and it's fantastic. And we often, feel so connected when we come back from spending an hour together outdoors, that we would never have, in spending time going to get, fancy drinks
Mm,
somewhere in the city, or going to listen to music, other things that we like to do. I do find the time invested doing something in parallel play,
mm.
and I underline that portion of it, play, is really important. So gathering women is a great way to do it. And then I've gathered online communities as well. But
Mhm.
for people who don't want to build an online community, I would say, finding other people who look like they're having a good time doing these things outdoors, and spending time with them is a great way to tap into the experience that you want to get out of it.
I like that because I think that there's a danger sometimes, especially with like what you mentioned, Instagram. There's a danger sometimes with other social media platforms that's known as social comparison, right? That we look at these lives as they're portrayed in media, or as they're portrayed in Instagram, or as they're portrayed in Facebook or something, and we feel bad about ourselves in comparison, that we aren't having the life that we see other people having. So it sounds like part of your antidote to that is, well, then go do it. Go do it with a group of women. You have, like, live the picture that you are envying in your feed. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, you're saying that right. And also, unfollow, follow fewer people, follow the people that really do, bring you joy and bliss and make
Mm.
you happy when you're following them. I mean, I'm just as likely to take a photo of myself after I've fallen, quite literally in the snow, or I've gotten in over my head, or it's super cold and I'm about to call it a day, as I am, finding a really good moment. I'm also very honest that I'm the slowest skier in my family. I'm quite, honest that they are often waiting for me at the bottom of runs. But follow people that make you feel great about. It's the same advice I would give you when you have a friend in real life. You would never want to hang out with somebody that makes you feel worse about
Right.
yourself after you've spent a half a day, an hour, or a coffee date with them. The same thing about social media. You wouldn't want to spend time. Don't spend time with somebody who's going to make you feel less than or inferior. And also, using social media obviously very sporadically, and using it to get ideas, and to get inspiration. I think that those are great uses of time. And I push back when I don't see myself shown in the communities that I want to be in and where I want to spend time. I definitely push back. I think the ski industry in general has done a rotten time of showing women, full
Mm.
stop, and then women who are 40 plus, 50 plus, women of color. There are so many gaping holes in the way we're represented in snow sports, and I push back all the time to get more of them represented, not just me, but the other women who I see are doing a great job. And by having a platform, it's a perfect way to shine a light on them and tell stories that I think need to be told.
So a lot of new mothers are coming to your different properties. They're picking up your book for the first time. They're coming to Mom Trends for the first time, and they're coming to your new podcast, which is called
It's called Ski Mom's Fun. And what that is probably skews the youngest of all of our platforms right now, which is really
Really?
exciting that I'm finding new audiences through the outdoor content that I'm creating. And then they're backing into some of the older content that I've created over the years.
I wouldn't have guessed that. Was that a surprise to you? I would have thought that like Mom Trends would be leading the way.
Well, Mom Trends, the new content that I'm putting on Mom Trends is dealing with sending kids off to college,
Okay.
how we're feeling going through menopause, handling finances as we're getting to be in our middle lives, and quite frankly, making more money than we have before. So that content is always been along for the ride with me, as I've been taking on parenting. Skiing and outdoor content, a lot of that skews a little bit younger, unfortunately.
Mm,
We find families are taking that on when their kids are quite young. There's not a lot of women coming to snow sports specifically in their 40s or 50s, but they are researching retirement. They're researching sending kids to college, so they may find that
got
Mom
it.
Trends content, or they've been along with me for the ride. So I'm excited to meet these new families, where they are in their exploration process of snow sports for sure.
And so your advice for the young mothers that are, finding you in these different properties, give us a taste of some additional advice that you have for mothers starting out with a career, starting out as a parent.
Well, one of the things I always also recommend to them is just don't forget about that playfulness. Again, we were talking about things I might have done differently, and I just looked at parenthood in the early years as like another problem to
Mm,
solve. If I just get the right gear and the right ratio of time to work to self care,
right.
that I will have this code cracked. There isn't a perfect ratio, and if you figure it out, it's going to change next week. So, remembering the playfulness and the humor, I definitely try to impart that with younger moms, and I think that they're getting that right. I think that they're putting a little more attention to self care, the next generation, and humor, and giving themselves more grace than probably my decade of parenting did. So, tapping into that playfulness, spending time with your kids doing
Mm.
things rather than thinking like the perfect gadget or software or technology is going to solve a problem. Sometimes just not trying to solve a problem and just doing things, enjoying the process is the right way to go.
Yeah, that was, obviously a big part of my book is that, and so much of what we talk about on the Talking About Kids podcast is that presence. There's just no way around it, right? There's no substitute. There's no gadget. There's no software. There's nothing that is going to replace being physically present in the life of your kids. So, Nicole, we just are celebrating another Mother's Day. How has this experience changed your thoughts about your own mother?
I'm actually at my mother's house right now while we're talking. I am so impressed at the way she handled motherhood so gracefully at such a young age. She had uh, me at 22 and my brother at 20. And what a brave, you know, thing to do at that age. I think I was still, trying to figure out what car to buy and where to live
Right.
and do I want to get a master's degree and, all of those things. And she was mastering parenthood. So I'm really proud of her bravery. I'm also proud of her how open-minded she's been with all of the change that she's seen in her lifetime of what women can do and should do. And she's really just been non-judgmental the whole time. She just really like, if that makes you happy, then
Mm,
go do it. And it's what I think it's one of the blessings of um, she and my dad gave my brother and I education. We didn't come out with student loans,
hmm.
but after that, there was really nothing other than love that they gave my brother and
Right.
I. Very little advice, but a lot of support along the way in belief that we would figure it out for ourselves. And that was one of the best gifts is not having a burden of expectation.
Mm,
But she really was a great cheerleader of the successes and the failures were never I never felt like she was over invested or that my successes were her successes. She wanted the best for me, but my failures and my wins were mine. And I think that's a really big gift that I didn't ever feel like I was having to do something to make up for her lack of
right.
experiences. And that was, I've hoped to spread that on to my daughters as well.
Well, Nicole, I just want to thank you so much for not only for being a friend, but for inspiring me and inspiring all the people that encounter your work. So thank you so much.
Thank you for hosting me. This was a delight to see you. And I love your conversations that you have on this podcast.
That was Nicole Feliciano. For more information about Nicole, including links to her blog and podcast, please visit talkingaboutkids.com. From there, you also can find out about upcoming episodes, suggest a topic, learn more about me and my books, or submit your questions for future guests. Our theme song is by The Senators. For more of their music, go to thesenatorsmusic.com. And remember, kids are young goats and young children. And the difference is that young goats are easier to manage.